Welcome to our class today. We are going to take a look at a subject that I've been finding so incredibly interesting in my own practice, and it's this concept of resistance and resistance in your practice, resistance in your body and in your mind, and how that affects the practice, and what are ways that we can look at resistance, being completely honest with ourselves or working towards that journey to practicing from that place where you're learning to release and just to be honest with yourself. And so I heard this talk the other day, which I thought was um, a really great talk, but it was, a question answer, and the question was, what do you really want in life, and and the answer was somewhere along the lines is, well, I need money, so I would like to have money to be able to live really well, to have autonomy and all these things. And although that's true, I mean, we all need to make a living somehow. um, if And so the questioner, goes through all these steps, are really getting an honest answer. What is it that you really want? I mean, you can have anything you want. What would you want? And after going down a few levels of, okay, so once you do have this money, this financial ability, what would you do? And and the final answer was, I want to live a very adventurous life where I'm traveling and I am, engaging with different things. And so, and the huge realization here was, wow, so if you're asking for money, which is, it is just, in this case, there's nothing, against money here, but if they're asking for money and really what they wanted was to live an adventurous life, then what if getting all that money meant you were going to live a super boring life, maybe in a beautiful, palace, but in a very place, an undesirable place for that person, and in a very boring lifestyle. So it just starts waking up these places where you can wish for something, or you can have a resistance towards something, and then start coming down and letting go, and really starting to understand this honesty. Um, so that's a practice. And so in yoga, what is your purpose of yoga? Why do you do yoga? So if you want to think about that, there are so many answers, and so many reasons too. And so you start uncovering your resistances towards your practice. And I get so many comments about if I'm doing a pose and within the limitations of my body, and I'm showing something, and the comment would be, if I did that, I would seriously injure myself, or I would never be able to get up out of the floor. And although um, what is the resistance, to those comments? And so how can we develop a practice where you are able to come into a place where you can actually practice happily and not be so scared of the outcome, or not enjoy the benefits of a practice or the journey of a practice, because there is this huge resistance to pain or to not being able to do something. And so how can we, if that's something that is interesting to you, work with that? And so it comes down to also what is the purpose, of being alive and moving on. And so this is a humongous question, but maybe the purpose is to enjoy, to enjoy life and to enjoy it without suffering. And so as we look around and we experience suffering, we see suffering in others and we try to help. What is this journey of suffering, and how is maybe resistance related to that? So let's explore that in our practice today. I heard a story once from Sadhguru, I'm sure many of you know. But there's a story about him driving his motorcycle throughout one of his travels, and he, at this one point, cut his leg, and the leg was bleeding, and he needed immediate sewing attention, but there wasn't any anesthetic to deal with the pain, before the leg had to be sewn up. And so, they asked him, doesn't it hurt? I mean, you want us to sew your leg right here without any anesthesia. And he said, it hurts, but I'm not suffering because of it. And so, that illustrates that things will happen, things will go on, tightness in the body will come, different resistances will come, but there is a place where we can let go enough, be honest enough, where we don't need to suffer in order to experience the pain and then to recover from it. And the suffering aspect can at least be looked at and then slowly at least understand that the suffering comes along as a mental condition and all of that, but we can start creating maybe a little tiny distance between the events that happen. So there's past and there's events in the future, and then there's what we can do now, and then there's the suffering that's connected to the past. There's suffering that could come in the future, and how we can start differentiating between the two and understanding it a little bit better so that we can get to the point where we can enjoy life. It's just that maybe we don't know how to do that yet, or we're doing it in a way that's not allowing us to enjoy life all the time, maybe just sometimes. Okay, and so if you have any comments or questions about this, send it in the chat, send it in the comments. I would love to hear any feedback. And so for your yoga practice, let's nurture a yoga practice that at least we are paying attention to the suffering. So the yoga practice is never a source of suffering. It can be a source of challenge and muscular pain. Sometimes a lot of emotional things come out, but doesn't necessarily have to come from a place of suffering. Instead, from a place of joy and discovery. So let's go over a few of the poses that we've done and a few of the videos before this. If you want to check them out, I would recommend it. I'll link them in the description below later on today so that you can have a few videos to watch before, if you want to follow along this line of learning how to soften the eyes, the ears, and throat, and lift the chest, and practice from that place of releasing and letting go, and really working on this resistance that sometimes makes the practice more judgmental, maybe, or maybe you're comparing constantly to other practitioners, and the practice isn't coming from that place that always was, a practice that always was this practice. For example, since you were a little child, when you woke up, you had this feeling of, I am. You understood, and as you grew older, your body changed, your abilities changed, situations around you changed, but that feeling that you get right as you wake up, that I exist, this is a constant feeling. You're in the same body, or you're experiencing the same feeling of aliveness. So that's a constant with everything else changing. And so for your practice too, you have that feeling that something is powering this practice. And then you have all the challenges that constantly change in your body and your mind and, people around you. So maybe the practice can be a discovery of what is that happiness, that little light that's always been there. It's always there. And I'm calling it a light, but it doesn't have to be a light. So, let's get on to the mat, and we're going to start this by opening the hips and starting to understand what this resistance, starting to separate this idea of suffering and the challenge of doing a pose or anything else that you do. And so to do that, we're going to not add any more tension as we practice. So we're going to sit first in a comfortable position where you can really lift your chest and not sit somewhere where your back is rounded. So lift the chest. Take a deep breath. And if there's any tension in the eyes, the ears, and the throat, soften the eye with every breath, the lens of the eye, the eyeball itself. Soften the ears, the inner ears, the tongue, the root of the tongue. If the tongue is stuck to the roof of the mouth, go ahead and peel the tongue and have it rest down in the bottom jaw or the jaw. And take one more inhale through the nose. And exhale, soft eyes, ears, throat. All right, with this, we're going to start our practice. So first, we're going to do a little exercise for the shoulders. And so go ahead and grab a strap. And I'm going to show you with a few different props. All right, so if I have the strap, I'm going to show you from the back. I'm going to grab my strap. Second. Okay, so grab the strap here, and I'm going to hold my strap so that I can start stretching the shoulders. So inhale, soften eyes, ears, and throat. And if any tension starts building in the shoulders, I'm going to release here the head of the shoulder here. And then I'm going to switch. And you can use the strap depending on the flexibility in your shoulders. So inhale, soften eyes, ears, and throat. Okay, so if that works and you can use the strap, keep using the strap. If you are able to use a little weight or a block, go ahead and grab your block. Do the block first. So the block goes on the hand that's going to go up top first. So grab the block. And then we're going to switch. And this is going to come to the top. So the hand that's grabbing the prop will be on top. So we'll do a few of these. Breathing, softening eyes, ears, and throat. And making sure to release the pressure right on the shoulders here. And we'll do a few more. Make sure that you're dropping the shoulders as you do this. All right. And now we'll do it with a little weight, or if you have some other prop, or you can redo it with your block. And so bring the weight down so that we can grab the weight here. And this, you can do this for a computer break or just to open the shoulders to start practice. And when you're finished, you can use your hands. And as you improve, you can also grab your wrists. But I'm not there yet. All right, so breathing throughout, you can try this practice to open up the shoulders a bit, and let me know how you like it. All right, so get onto your mat here, and we're going to work on the hips. And so the way that I'm going to start is with my right leg forward and my left leg back. Okay, so however your lunge looks like, we're going to start here. And what I want to do here is I want to stretch, really keep that stretch localized in the hips. And so the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you how not to do it. So if I'm going to stretch here, I could come and I could bring my hips up and straighten my leg. Okay, so you noticed here the movement of the hips, they come up, right? So hips up. So what I want to do is I want to maintain the level of my hips here. So if I'm looking at the wall, I don't want my hips coming up vertically at all. All I want to do is straighten the back leg without lifting the hips. So if I have a partner helping me, I can have that partner place their hands in my lower back here, right on the hip, and make sure that the hip does not move. So I'm only going to lengthen the back leg here. Okay, so here we go. So we grab the leg, we breathe, and we're thinking about resistance in this practice. And so where is the resistance the most? The answer, the final answer, it's the resistance is in my mind. But there are some muscle fibers that in the beginning may, take over, and eventually the mind talks to these fibers, right? That sends the information of, you're not in danger. Let's work on them, and slowly they release. So it's ultimately always a work of the mind. That's the beginning of a yoga practice. And so we're going to stay there and really minimize any lift in the hips. So there was still a little bit of lift in the hips there, but less than this. All right. So here we go. We really straighten the back leg without any lift in the hips. And we feel the resistance. We remove the load off of the hips. And we try to soften the groin and then come down. So we'll do it one more time. Soften the groin around the head of the femur. Soften the grip, the resistance. Breathe into that resistance. Soften the eyes, the ears, and the throat. All right, and then don't allow all of the memory of the past, right? The suffering of the past, the tightness that you know in the past, to really disrupt your joy in now or in the future. And so look at the resistance, soften the eyes, ears, and throat. Keep the hips where they are and just straighten the back leg, even if it's a bit. Straighten the back leg and bring it down. And we come back into a child's pose. Soften eyes, ears, and throat. And let's do that again on the second side. So same thing here. I'm going to keep the hips on one level without bringing the hips up and down at all, or up. I'm going to straighten the back leg. So stay here for a few moments, and instead of, going into the pose, take a few moments to soften the eyes, the ears, and the throat. Take a few moments to send that softness into the head of the femur here, the circumference of your groin. So release the resistance. And what we're going to do here is we're going to straighten the back leg without lifting the hips. So straighten the back leg, minimize the lift in the hips. So, we improve it slowly. So this is a lot of lift in the hips. So we don't want that. What we want to do is just straighten the back leg, keep the hips in one place. So straighten the back leg. And then once you're here, start seeing where is the biggest resistance in the head of the femur. Is it in the back of the legs? Breathe into that resistance and soften the eyes, the ears, and the throat. Soften the head of the femur. Release, 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 and create length in the leg. And come down. Let's do that one more time. So keeping the hips where they are, stretch the back leg. Create length here in the front of the thigh. Really release any kind of grip or resistance around the head of the femur. Hug the muscle to your bone and lengthen the heel behind you. Lengthen the bone as if you're making the bone longer and longer and longer. The leg bone, right? And then come down. And rest in child's pose. Okay, so this is a very nice way to lengthen the hamstrings, release this tension here around the head of the femur. And you can do it a few times where you do it slowly and you really learn how to lengthen and to keep your hips in one plane. But you can also practice where you do a certain amount of repetitions that are fast, quick, and without too much thinking. And that also starts breaking up that pattern of resistance. So you can see which method works with you, and you can try both. And so I'll show you the faster one. So I'll show you on this left side here. And here I would just do 10 in a row. They're not perfect. I'm trying to keep my hips from moving vertically up. And I am stretching, breathing through my nose, keeping the eyes, ears, and throat soft. Like that. Okay, so minimal movement of my hips away from the floor. So if I were to measure this distance between the mat and the hip, I'm trying to keep this distance the same as I straighten the back leg. So without increasing this distance here, I straighten the back leg. And I do that quickly, and I repeat often. And I break through that resistance, through that grip, through that pattern. Okay, and you can do the other side. So come here, get the feet in the position, and then breathe. Release any tension in the eyes, the ears, and the throat. And you can work at it without any kind of a long hold. Just lengthening and opening the hips here. Okay. All right, so this is a really great way to practice that, making sure that you're not adding any tension in the head or in any other part of your body, making sure that you can breathe throughout doing this pose. Then after, you can place your head on the floor, making sure that the skin of the forehead is coming down towards the nose and not up towards your head. So in a previous class, we worked on Parshva It's a really great pose, and we worked with the chair and with Parshva really opening the hips. And so another way to practice Parshva which I find very effective in the beginning if there's a lot of tightness, it's a similar approach than this, is to go into the pose often and very short duration. So versus holding Parshva, which is a wonderful way to practice, but maybe this is just a different approach. So we're going to grab a chair or the wall, and I'm going to show you how to do that with Parshva. Okay, so if I'm working with a chair, I'm going to grab a chair and bring it out in front of me so I can hold on to it. I can also use the wall for this, but I'm going to come into my pose, come into this Parshva like this, and I'm going to use the chair as a guide. So what I want to do here is, if you haven't watched that video, I would recommend watching it just for pointers on the pose. So when I come down on this pose, even if I'm coming down here, what I want to avoid is this knee moving in. So when there's a lot of tightness here in the inner leg, this is the first thing that happens. So I will move my mat. Okay, so I want to practice in a way here that when I come down, so my feet is pointing forward, back foot is a little bit at an angle. And when I come down into this pose, I don't bring the knee in. So I keep this knee out. So if I'm coming down this much, or however much I'm able to come down, I make sure that that knee is out. I also make sure, if this was my back leg here, okay, that I'm not lifting the outer edge of the foot, that I'm keeping the outer edge of the foot really planted on to the mat there, right? So that is going to be how I come up. I put more weight on the outer edge of my foot. So here, coming into the pose here, right, bringing the outer foot into the mat. I make that foot heavier as I come up. Okay, and then I go into this method of practicing. So I come into the pose and I come out, remove the load off the groin of the front leg, and come out by just bending at the hips here, not just the knee, but really allowing this to be restriction free. And I do this about 10 times. So I'm thinking knee out, outer edge towards the mat, and come up. And I can do this about 20 times. And I can come all the way down if I'd like. I can use my chair to come up as a guide. And do it on the other side and practice like this. So make sure that you're practicing this in a way that you're not hurting yourself. It's different. It's not like an easy thing, but it shouldn't have any kind of a hot, sharp pain while you're doing it. And another really nice way to start getting into the hips is to use a belt like this. And very quickly, if you don't have a yoga wall, there's a very easy way to do it at your own house. And all you need is a belt and a door. And so what you're going to do is you're going to open your door and you're going to weave the belt around. Yeah, so I'm doing the same thing on both sides. And I would recommend this door, I have to lock it, but practicing this on the other side of the door so that when you pull, the door doesn't open towards you, but here you are, you have your own rope wall. make sure you test this, that it does take your weight, okay? But, so then you would be able to do this using this, okay? All right, now, a few more minutes. So here, I have my rope wall, and second. Okay. And I'm going to hold on to it like that. And I'm going to come down and pull and use the wall to help me. Okay. Okay. So that's the quick, repetitive way of going into a place that is, restricted and tight, and finding that opening in the hips by using these exercises where you're repeating often. You're going into a very, place where there may be a lot of resistance to stretch, but you're doing it by softening the eyes, ears, and throat by breathing. And slowly, because it's a quicker movement, you learn this release, with time. So I hope these techniques help you. You can always finish off with a great supported downward dog. Let me show you how to do that. I'm going to move this computer here. And let's see what I can get on the camera. Okay, so if I have this on my door or on a rope wall, I'm going to get a fairly long belt like this. And I'm going to come into the belt and bring the belt so that it's not on my waist, but on this lower hip. And I pinch it in the front. And I step over the belt so that now I have a harness, coming through the back and going here in the foot. And I'm going to show you this. Okay, so it looks like this. You first have to really put your weight onto the rope wall, and then you come forward into downward dog, and you're able to really hang, so your hands free here, and you can place your hands and then bring the skin of the back up, so really using the hands to push the whole head of the shoulder back, and really have a sensation where you can trust and allow your weight to be supported by the rope. Lift the sit bones up. Allow the back to have its normal curve. Untuck a little bit here. Lift the chest. And really make sure that your legs are very, very, very straight. And you can hang here for a few minutes. If the rope is too tight, you can put a towel here in between your skin and the belt. And then when you're ready, just go ahead and bend the knees and come up. And move the belt. All right. I hope that you enjoyed the class and you explore this idea of resistance in your practice, and how you can breathe, release, and break through the resistance and start getting that little tiny distance in between what you actually have control of, which is your actions, and the difference between that and then suffering, staying in that place where you're helpless and you can't help just but suffer. It really does sometimes remove a lot of the joy of being. And so, see you next Monday. I look forward to your comments and to your views. I really appreciate that. Um, See you next week.